This is Eden from HelixxVR. Today I'm taking a quick look at Spuds Unearthed. This is a VR real-time strategy game where you need to direct the fight with what appears to be zombie potatoes across a number of different planets. It's an interesting idea. This is available for PSVR and PSVR, which I'm playing on. Now, first off, I'll explain the core gameplay loop. You have to choose a planet. Bigger planets are more difficult, smaller ones easier. On arrival, you need to help your units take down a number of towers. Now, most of your units are tiny little things you have no control over. They just follow 3 predetermined paths and attack if they survive to reach the target. Enemies will be attacking both your units and your base in the meantime. It's your job to help your units get to the target and to defend your base. You can do this in 2 ways. Firstly, you have a pair of guns. You can use these to shoot enemy units, but they won't work on the towers. They can only be used for a while until they need to cool down. The guns can be moved around, and you need to manually crank them to shoot. Secondly, you have up to 3 of your own Spuds, each with their own abilities. You can throw these around on the battlefield. They will attack or defend, and then they'll make their way back. You then throw them out again and again. You do these actions until all of the enemy towers have been destroyed by your troops, and you win, or until your own base gets destroyed. While there is more depth to it in getting new Spuds, customization, different guns, and upgrades, that's essentially it. One issue the game has is that it doesn't make much of this very clear. When you first start the game, you'll be taken into a tutorial with 14 screens to read through, then directly into another tutorial with 4 screens to read, then another with 5 more to read. Despite quite a lot of reading of tutorials, I find myself having very little idea of what to do when in game the first time. It has you read through quite a lot, but it doesn't really explain how to play particularly well, and it's often not obvious. After figuring out the game, I did find it to be fun. It can be quite frantic, trying to balance keeping track of the enemies attacking the base, deciding which group of enemies to gun down, and managing your own team of Spuds as you throw them out on their return. As it does get quite repetitive though, I recommend playing it in short sessions. It's an easy one to get burned out on. Even going up the difficulties and through different planets doesn't really make too much of a difference. As you progress through the game, you can unlock new Spuds, upgrades for them, and different guns. This is where an issue comes in. It's extremely grindy. You have to play a lot to unlock things. This is even more of an issue because of the point I made before. It's repetitive. If it wasn't so grindy, playing a few matches a week wouldn't be an issue. As it stands, you need to put in hours to make significant progress, and without that progress, it gets boring. The strategy aspect doesn't really help keep it too fresh, as the levels never really change from a few stages that you cycle between, the enemy tactics never seem to change, and one strategy works fairly consistently, no matter what difficulty level you choose. As for other issues, as mentioned, I played this on PSVR. Unfortunately, it had some of the issues more common on PSVR, which I imagine wouldn't be a problem on the PC version. I ran into frequent tracking problems. This caused issues when using the guns, both with aiming floating slightly off, and with the cranking suddenly stopping. Positioning was quite uncomfortable too. It often felt like things were too far forward from the default centered position. You can actually extend your hands out by pressing some buttons, but this feels unnatural, and it breaks immersion to have virtual hands so far away from the controllers. If playing on PSVR with room scale, it'd just be a case of stepping forward a touch more without as much concern about the camera's view still being on the controllers. Outside of platform-specific problems, I wouldn't be surprised if someone strained their arm playing this. To shoot the guns, you often repeat the same motion over and over with the same arm, and it's not particularly comfortable. That's one more reason why you only need to play it in short bursts. On the production value side, the graphics are bright and cartoony. Fairly simple, but the quality is certainly there, and it has quite an interesting look. The sound is fairly unobtrusive. It exists, but most of what you hear will be the sound of battle, which doesn't stand out overly. And while I have mentioned a number of issues, one positive is the cost. It comes in at $10, €10, or £8. Not too bad for the quality and the amount of playtime you can get out of it if the game appeals. Spuds Unearthed is a somewhat fun game with a decent amount of content to unlock. With that said, it's very repetitive and grindy. I wouldn't tell most people to go out and buy it, but I'd not say it's terrible. It's a decent game, and it might serve well for a simple introduction to real-time strategy for younger players. I generally wouldn't recommend it though. This is Eden from HelixxVR. As always, if you'd like to see more content like this, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that little alert button to see notifications when we upload a new video.